Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Your Human Design Coach podcast. I'm Ashley Watkins. Your quote for today: kiss the joy as it flies. And that comes from William Blake. Well, it's been a minute since I've been on the old mic. Had an episode a couple weeks ago, but since I've actually recorded, it's been a while. Very exciting and fun May and June around these parts. We had a wedding in our family. I was able to go see some family and friends in some various parts of the country. And then I was fortunate enough to get to attend a week-long meditation and yoga retreat the beginning of June in Taos, New Mexico. I would say, honestly, guys, I'm still unpacking the learning and the growth that I did there. I'm still integrating. Something that has come up for me a lot this year is the idea of opening the heart, which I think will flow into what I'm going to talk a bit about today in this minisode with you, which is the centers on the human design chart. But this idea of opening the heart, I've talked about this in the way of I'm trying to really drop more out of my head, that defined mind, and more into the heart when I'm in meditation, when it comes to my intuition, my decision making. I've just realized how much that serves me, how much that helps me to slow down. And so this was something that at this retreat really kind of came out as the intention of the week, the thing that I wanted to sort of bring with me to different sessions and through these different yoga practices that we were doing. And, when we talk about, by the way, I'm just jumping in case you couldn't tell. I think if you've been with me on this journey for a bit, you know how it is when I haven't been on the mic for a minute, and some of this may get cut, who knows. But let me rewind just a little bit just to give this minisode a little bit of shape. So I was able to, a couple of weeks ago, lead a day retreat, and we focused on the open and defined centers. So again, when you look at your chart, those 9 shapes kind of have a flow that reminds us of the chakra system. Definitely pulls in pieces of that, but just goes a little bit more in detail into some of the energy that we put out in the world, that we pick up in the world. Because of that, and also something I'll talk about in just a little bit, the centers have been on my mind, leading that retreat and kind of doing deeper dive and study and thinking about how to present that information. So, it's been kind of interesting to have that experience of sort of teaching and going deeper in those centers with others and also doing the same for myself. And I think one of the pieces of learning that has stood out to me from the retreat, which again, I'm still kind of, unpacking, but when I think about the open heart, I think that is interesting to me because I do feel that I am, a kind person, a generous person. But I think what came to me in that retreat is that there's still a guardedness of like being hurt, being too vulnerable. I've said a couple times recently, I love vulnerability. On my terms, you be really vulnerable with me. It's safe. And then when it comes time, I'll decide what I want to share. I'm sure it's relatable to some of you if it comes from being vulnerable and being hurt. But I was reading this really good book as I was on my retreat called Diamond in Your Pocket. It was recommended to me by a friend. And I think she must have heard it in my voice that I needed to read this. But one of the lines that really stood out to me in this book was, to love and be loved is to be willing to be hurt, not wanting to be hurt, but to be willing to be hurt. And that kind of stopped me like in my tracks. Like it's one of those moments where I'll remember where I was and what I was doing when I read that line and kind of going back and reading it again and being like, that's it. And so I say all this just to, number one, kind of share with you something that stood out to me in the retreat. We did several different yoga sessions where we kind of focused on poses that were about opening the heart, which again felt meaningful because of my kind of intention that I had set for myself. And one of them was camel pose. And, I've been doing yoga for a long time, but really not in the way that I learned about it at this retreat. Like I've gone to hot yoga. I've done yoga on the mat in my basement. Just here in the last, 6 months or so, I'm starting to see the deeper experience of yoga, which I know is very white lady of me. So sorry about that. But we did this camel pose. And then at the end, we ended up in a face down Shavasana. And when I got up from this Shavasana, my mat was just covered with like tears and all the things that happen when you cry, right? The little puddle of this open heart camel pose. And so it comes to me when I think about my own human design chart and I think about I have 3 open centers, and one of them is the emotions center. And I think having an open emotion center and kind of being a sponge for others' feelings and kind of having a narrative of being younger and being told, you're too sensitive. I think there's been some layers that have been added on to the heart to kind of protect that. So that has been kind of my big learning that's kind of on my heart and my mind as I led this retreat about 2 weeks ago, which was a fantastic experience in Wichita with the Strategic Women's Group. We've been talking about it. It went so well. To those of you who might be listening who joined us, thank you for an amazing day. I'm sure you all love it when I ramble, but I'm going to get a little more focused here and talk about something that's kind of coming up, in the next couple weeks that I'm doing a collaboration with another local entrepreneur, all around wonderful woman named Synthanee Humbert, who is the owner of Inner Oasis. Synthanee has been my gateway to what I talked about as far as the deeper experience of yoga and going beyond my very narrow understanding of that, going to her class at Unity Yoga and crying for the first time in yoga, but in a really good way. And, I've done several open heart poses in her classes that have brought me to tears. And if that scares you, then don't be. It's so good and cathartic and wonderful. And I always come out feeling lighter and more limber. So when Synthanee and I have been getting to know each other, and she kind of said, what do you think about some collaboration? And I'm like, it's a hell yes. So we are going to be coming together for a series of 9 events. And as I mentioned, there are 9 centers on the human design chart. Most likely these are evening. I'm sure they will continue to evolve as we are going through them, but 2-hour events focused on one singular human design center, both open and defined. So whether you have on your chart, those shapes are white or colored in, it will be relevant. And we are starting on Tuesday, July 14th, so a couple weeks after this comes out, with the open and defined will or ego center. Now, if you've been listening along, first of all, thanks. And you have certainly heard the open will center come up, had some conversations with guests about that, looked at some charts, talked about my experience with that. Most recently, we did an interview episode with Sonia Holt Cartwright, who is a coach who incorporates some human design work. And she reflected on her open will center and some of the learnings that she's had there and how, she's sort of done that shadow work to try to work with the energy that she picks up there and understanding her innate value. If you haven't listened to that episode, it was such a good one. Just go back one. It's episode 17. Synthanee and I chose to start with the Open Will Center on the 14th because it is viewed by many human design teachers as the most impactful. So it's kind of down there on the chart on that bottom right side, but it has a lot of power. About 63% of people have this open. So remember, when you have the open centers, you're maybe more susceptible to other people's energy, may feel some conditioning, may just not have as consistent of energy, lessons to learn there. And then if you have defined, you may have a more reliable access to that form of energy. You may influence others around you from the things that are kind of associated with that center. So with our will, it's about self-worth, it's about value, it's about kind of the motivation to make things happen, but a lot of wisdom, whether it's open or defined. So excited on the 14th to dive into that. So really what that 2-hour time will look like in the evening is, we're not calling it a workshop. I think Synthanee said it's an experience, which I love. And we're going to get her on the podcast. She's got lots of great things going on right now. So once life, I'm not going to say slows down, because I don't know that it ever does in her life, but once she, has kind of gets through this kind of period that she's in, we're definitely going to sit down and have a conversation. But this experience is going to be something that's really been on my mind since I started my study of the centers. I wanted to do something where, me, application, let's bring it to life. So within this 2-hour event that we're doing, I'm going to do some teaching. We're going to talk about the shadow and wisdom of both open and defined. We're going to talk about what are the gates that come off of this will center. So we're really going to get to dive deeper. I'm super excited about that. Most of the workshops I've done so far have been kind of entry level, which I love, but I'm ready to go deeper. So I'm going to have some teaching in there, of course, start by grounding, some meditation. And then Synthanee is going to take us through, really, it's kind of this guided journey. So from that learning, opportunities to reflect, to talk to each other, but leaning into breath, movement, sound, really trying to come into energetic awareness of where you are within that open and defined will center. Having attended several of Synthanee's class, having gotten to know her over these last several months, I am so thrilled, if you have not experienced her class yet, for you to do that, to experience her energy and her work. Synthanee is a healer. She is a guide. She's a teacher. You think she'd be a projector. She's actually a generator, but her energy is powerful and palpable. So I'm excited for my part to get to go deeper. Excited for those of you who have already signed up to come on this journey with us. And if you haven't, well, you know what to do. Go down below and click that link. You can learn more about the details of the event. Again, this is first of 9. So you may feel more drawn to some than others. I've had some people I've told about this that they were like, ooh, sign me up. My will center gets me. I reflect on that often. So I need this. There may be ones that we do that resonate more deeply, and that's okay. They're meant to work together and stand alone, probably every couple months. So the next one sometime maybe in September is what we're thinking about. So July 14th, would love to see you there. And on a podcast note, this has been such a fun experience and experiment, and I'm still kind of figuring out where I want to go and what I want it to be. For the summer, at least, probably through August, I'm going to go to an every other week cadence with this, and then we'll just see what kind of evolves. I've really been loving my interview episodes. I was so nervous to start them, but I get so much inspiration from doing them, from listening to them, editing them. But I do have some other individual things. Likely as I prepare more for some of these upcoming workshops, I'm going to have things to share. But as always, if you have any questions, would love to tackle those in an Ask Ashley episode. Anything at all, you know where to find me. And as always, thank you for listening. I hope to see you at something in person coming up, and take care of yourself. Happy summer.